celebrating Latino and immigrant voices. Our identities are crucial to who we are as people, and as an Iranian Muslim American, in this moment in time where we are in an illegal and unnecessary war, I am so warmed to be here with you all in community. Because when I'm not with you all, what I'm doing is I'm checking my phone every 30 seconds to see if my grandma is still alive. And that has been killing me for the past 40 days. And what's really important in this moment in time is to make sure that people in power know how community feels. And this is what the Gubernatorial Forum today is about. So again, thank you for joining us. We have some other amazing sponsors that we're going to recognize in a second, but I want to turn it over to David.
Good evening, everyone. I'm David Trujillo. I'm the Executive Director for ACLU California Action. We want to thank you. I want to thank our, tonight's forum is presented by California Immigrant Policy Center, the California Latino Legislative Caucus Foundation, and the ACLU California Action. We are honored to welcome the more than 1,200 advocates, leaders, legislators, and California. Across with that, I'm going to bring Senator Elena Gonzalez from the Latino Caucus, Chair of the Latino Caucus.
Senator Gonzalez and the Latino Caucus have been key partners for everything that's happening in the state when it comes to immigration. So it's so honored for us to be here as co-hosts with them.
Thank you so much. And it is so wonderful to see so many of you here. How was the conference today? Well, we are together in a collective fight for our future, and this is exactly why, together with the CIPC, with the ACLU, both Masi and David, and so many of you, the California Legislative Latino Caucus, 38 members strong, which is 35 legislators, 3 constitutional officers, representing every corner of the state of California, are here together in the fight for our future with you. Nuestra Voz is so very important. Now, we thank our media partners. We thank our moderators, you who are incredible. We thank, of course, every single one of you, the journalists and our legislators, elected members, and nonprofit leaders who are here gathering today, and especially the candidates who are standing up and going to be facing the tough questions, but more importantly, we're going to get to see them transparently, with accountability, and again, in the fight for our future. So I want to thank you on behalf of the California Legislative Latino Caucus for your incredible work, and we do this together. Thank you again.
Thank you. And before we turn it over to our moderators, I want to thank the California Community Foundation, the Sierra Health Foundation, CARE Action, Shirla Action, as well as Choose Children for being sponsors for tonight's event. David.
And now please join me in welcoming tonight's Nuestra Voz 2026 moderators, Lupita Baltazar, Telemundo 33, and Jean Guerrero, author and contributing opinion writer for the New York Times.
Buenas tardes, Sacramento. ¿Cómo están? I'm Lupita Baltazar, reporter with Telemundo 33 here in Sacramento, and it's an honor to be with all of you tonight for today's forum.
And I'm Jean Guerrero, journalist and author. It's a privilege to stand alongside Lupita in this room, surrounded by so many people who understand what is at stake for Latino and immigrant communities in California and across this country.
Tonight, we ask the candidates seeking to become California's next governor to speak directly to you, the community leaders, the advocates, the families, and the voters who will decide this election.
Before we bring the candidates out, let us go over tonight's format and ground rules.
Now, each candidate will have 1 minute for opening and closing statements and 1 minute to respond to each question. We'll also have rapid fire round with yes or no answers and optional 30-second explanation. A timer will be displayed showing each candidate how much time they have remaining for their response. We will help keep time, and microphones will be turned off when time is up. All times are hard stops.
There will be no rebuttals, no follow-up exchanges between candidates, and no candidate-to-candidate dialogue. We ask that audience members hold their applause until each candidate has finished their responses so that all voices receive equal time. Candidate Katie Porter will have a hard stop at 7 o'clock.
No props or signs are permitted on stage or in the audience during the forum to respect the integrity of this space and the gravity of tonight's conversation.
2 of tonight's questions come directly from the community. submitted by members of organizations represented in this room. Your questions are at the heart of this forum.
Now let's bring out the candidates. We're going to start off with Betty Yee, former California State Controller.
Antonio Villaraigosa, former mayor of the city of Los Angeles and former state assembly speaker.
Up next, Tony Thurmond, State Superintendent of Public Instruction.
Tom Steyer, climate advocate.
Up next, Katie Porter, former member of the U.S. House of Representatives representing the 47th District.
Next, we have Matt Mahan, mayor of the city of San Jose.
Up next, Javier Becerra, former U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary and former California Attorney General.
We will begin with opening statements. Each candidate has 1 minute to introduce themselves and share why they are running to be California's next governor. Betty Yee, you may begin.
This on? Okay, very good. Good evening, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here with all of you and with my colleagues. My name is Betty Yee. I'm your former two-term state controller and also spent about a decade on the State Board of Equalization and a former state budget director. I am running for governor because as a native first-generation Californian, a proud daughter of immigrants, I am just seeing the vulnerabilities that California is currently facing in terms of how we need to really live up to our ambition of being a large global economy. Look at this audience. Look at this audience. This is our hope. This is our ambition, and this is what is possible. And yet, as a matter of policy with state government, we've not done everything we can to be sure that we're uplifting all of our communities, to be sure that we that they have livelihoods going forward, and that we are doing everything we can to make sure that when we talk about being the fourth largest economy in the world, that everyone is sharing in that prosperity, and that we are building a California that's inclusive of all of us.
We're going to have to move on. Thank you. To the next candidate, you may please begin. Tom Steyer.
I'm Steyer, and when I travel around the state of California and talk to Latino audiences, I hear two things. Can't afford to live in this state and feel very unsafe due to ICE. I started a business in California and I walked away from it 14 years ago to serve the Californian people. I had the opportunity to take on the special interests, the tobacco companies, the oil companies, the out-of-state companies that were ripping off Californian citizens. I also got a chance to collect 8 million signatures to impeach Donald Trump. And I promise you, as your governor, I will continue to take on the special interests on behalf of lowering costs and fighting Trump and ICE. I will lower the electric costs by taking on the electric monopolies. I'm for single-payer health to drop health costs. I will have a tax on oil companies for this huge transfer to them from the price rise, and I will take on Trump and ICE every time on behalf of California citizens.
We're moving on. We're moving on to Antonio Villaraigosa.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being on the front lines of the fight to protect our democracy. Thank you to the ACLU and the immigrant rights groups that are here today. I started out with the farm worker boycott, with the Chicano movement. I've been involved in the civil rights movement my entire life. Was president of the ACLU. Who better to take on Donald Trump than someone who grew up in the Chicano movement and the civil rights movement, and someone that has stood up for immigrants my entire life. As I've said so many times, I've never seen people covered from head to toe, like the Ku Klux Klan, violently ripping kids from their parents. We need to stop that. We need to stand up for justice.
Thank you. We're moving on with Tony Thurmond, please go ahead.
Good evening. Buenas noches. Gracias por oportunidad para hablar con ustedes en esta conversación de Nuestra Voz. I'm Tony Thurmond, the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, and it is my honor to be here with you. It has been my honor to work with you on so many issues, like the legislation that we helped to pass to keep ICE out of our schools, to keep ICE out of our hospitals and emergency rooms, and the legislation that I'm sponsoring now that says that any company in California that operates an ICE detention center will pay a 50% tax. We will abolish ICE when I am governor, and we will keep our communities safe and help to create a pathway to citizenship for those who want the opportunity. Just like my grandmother, who came here as an immigrant from Colombia, and my mother, who was an immigrant born in Panama, who came here wanting to live the American dream for her family. They work to clean bathrooms for a living so that we can get an education and have an opportunity, and we will do that for our immigrant families and for all in California. And when I'm governor, we will restore universal health care for undocumented immigrants in the state of California. I'm Tony Thurmond. We will build housing and help the homeless. Thank you for having us here tonight.
Thank you, Tony. We're moving on to Katie Porter.
Good evening. When I look out at this room, I see a room full of fighters and leaders, people who are working tirelessly to protect Californians and lift them up, despite the hate and the chaos that is coming out of Washington. You deserve a governor who is going to be a partner with you in that fight, who will be laser focused on bringing down costs and improving opportunity for all. In Congress, with or without a whiteboard, I held CEOs' feet to the fire. I passed laws that lowered costs, improved healthcare coverage. I fought for workers' rights, voted for the Dream and Promise Act. With Donald Trump back in office, we need a governor who will be fierce, who will be fearless, someone who understands the struggles of families and hardworking people. I will tackle our cost crisis, and I will go toe to toe with Donald Trump.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
We're moving on with Matt Mahan. Go ahead, please.
Good evening. Buenas tardes a todos. Gracias por invitarme esta noche. Mi suegro fue el hombre más patriota que he conocido. My father-in-law was the most patriotic man I've ever met. And he didn't step foot in this country until he was 35 years old. He loved this country because he knew he could work hard here and build a better future for his daughters. But right now, people like my father-in-law, my mother-in-law are under attack from this administration. This administration is at war with immigrants, and we are all the lesser for it. Which is why, as governor, just as I've done as mayor of San Jose, we will use every tool, the law, our budget, legal services to fight for the rights of our neighbors. But we will also remember that the best resistance is delivering results by improving our public schools, building more housing, making our cities more affordable, so that there is no excuse for anyone to join a movement that completely gets wrong what makes America great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're moving on to Javier Becerra.
Buenas tardes. I am the son of immigrants. I am the first in my family to have an opportunity to graduate from a university. I grew up in the home that my father built, a construction worker with a 6th grade education, and my mother, who came from Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. When they married, they were able to give us a future, my 3 sisters and I. But right now, we are facing a crisis, whether it's the man-made crisis coming from Washington, D.C., or whether it's the cost of living crisis that we face here at home. We need someone who knows how to govern through crisis. When I was your attorney general and Trump tried to eliminate the Affordable Care Act and DACA, I took on that crisis. We went all the way to the Supreme Court and we beat him. We stopped ICE from being able to invade our state. We took on the threats that were Donald Trump. Over 120 times we stood up to him. When I was your secretary, we helped pull you out of COVID. We balanced a budget larger than the budget of the state of California. I'm ready to lead.
Thank you, candidate Javier Becerra. We're going to begin with the first question. It goes to the heart of who this state is and who has been left out of power for too long.
Question 1. Latinos make up 40% of California's population, and the AAPI community is the fastest growing in the state. Black immigrant and Arab, Middle Eastern, Muslim, and South Asian communities shape California's future in ways too rarely acknowledged. Yet these communities remain dramatically underrepresented in courts, state government, and boardrooms. What specific commitments will you make starting on day 1 to ensure that your appointments, judicial nominations, and agencies reflect the people who power this state? Antonio Villaraigosa, you may begin.
You know, a lot of people on this stage are going to make promises, but the best way to see what somebody's going to do is to see what they did. Before me as mayor of Los Angeles, we had about 25% Latinos. That's the height. By the time I left, it was 50% of my appointments, and every commission, 50% of my staff was Latino. 70% were of color. Look at the current administration. There's not a representation, anything like that. I'm absolutely clear que el papel de primero no es abrir la puerta y decir, soy el único que va a pasar por esa puerta. El papel de primero es abrir la puerta para los demás. The role of the first is to open up the rest. And I've always understood that when I was speaker, when I was mayor, and I will as your governor.
Thank you. Now we're moving on to Tony Thurmond. You may begin, please.
In my role as state superintendent, I have made the most diverse appointments as leadership within the Department of Education, as well as to commissions all across the state. And it's been my honor to appoint those who are African American, Latino, Asian American, and Pacific Islanders. It's been my honor to sponsor the legislation that has given us ethnic studies as a graduation requirement in this state, so that our children can learn about the contributions of their ancestors. And as governor, I will bring forward a reparations package that allows the descendants of former slaves to have access to dollars to launch a business, buy a home, or to get an education. We will support our diverse communities through appointment, by building work, and by making sure that the power of state government does not ignore the minority contractors and the women contractors who want just an opportunity to contribute. The state of California spends billions per department, and we will ensure that the people of color who represent this state will be represented in state government by your leaders, in appointments, and in the contracts that are available for those who want to do business in the state of California.
Thank you so much. Moving on to Betty Yee.
You know, when I think about the promise of California, it's got to be that we have representation at all levels of decision-making that reflects who Californians are. So that will be definitely reflected in my administration, as I've done when I've had appointments in my past positions. But more importantly, it's about the work that we do. It's the work that we do in terms of building economic power among all of our communities. We are vulnerable here in California. Why we are such a target for this Trump administration is because not every Californian has an economic base of power upon which to stand. That means entrepreneurship and small business opportunities in all of our communities. It means growing our healthcare workforce so that people who need to have access to healthcare can have it right in their communities, and frankly, be part of that workforce for jobs that can be paying a living wage. But all of this is about how we're going to build an economic resilience so we are that federal aid keeps coming after.
Thank you so much. Now we're moving on to Katie Porter. You may begin, please.
California's history is about immigrants, their stories, their hard work, their sacrifices, but also the burdens, the challenges, the discrimination, and the hatred that they often faced. But California's future is also about immigrants, their ideas, their talents, their perspective, their potential. It's the job of the governor to lift up all Californians, documented, undocumented, regardless of race, regardless of where they live in California. We leave talent on the table when we don't address the historic injustices and put new voices into positions of power. whether that's the judiciary or the governor's cabinet. Every Californian deserves to have those in power and those in office who know their perspective and can fight for them.
Thank you, Katie Porter. Moving on to Matt Mahan.
Thank you. I'm proud to lead one of the most diverse cities in the country. We're over 40% foreign-born, truly representative of California's diversity. And as mayor, I work with my colleagues on the city council and our city staff to look at our hiring data, to disaggregate it, to look at what we're doing in terms of building a diverse pipeline so that our city staff, from our police departments to Parks and Rec, are reflective of the incredible diversity of our city. As Antonio said, as a mayor, you actually are executional. You're in the weeds doing this work every single day. As a small business owner, long before I was in the public sector, I also prioritized having a diverse and representative team. I always ensured that we went out to non-traditional institutions and places to diversify our pipeline and reduce barriers to applicants so that we would have a truly diverse team in my company. It's always been a commitment of mine.
Thank you. Now we're moving on to Javier Becerra. You may go ahead, please.
We often say in Spanish, dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres. Tell me with whom you walk and I will tell you who you are. I know who I am and I know with whom I walk. And when I walk into that governor's mansion, when I walk into that governor's office, I won't close the door. I will leave it open so everyone in this audience has a chance to walk in, because this is what California looks like, and this is who should be inside the governor's office and in the administration of Governor Becerra. And so please, get your applications ready. We're going to need them. I hope that you recognize that we have the power now to make that change. I see Angelica Salas from Chirla. I was very fortunate yesterday to announce that Chirla Action Fund has endorsed my candidacy. I want the folks that Chirla represents to work in my administration. I want to make sure that the caucus members who are here, and I see Pro Tem Limon has arrived as well. I want them to know that I'm going to look.
Thank you, Mr. Becerra. Thank you. Moving on to Tom Steyer.
So I think it's important to understand that personnel is policy. And that means we absolutely need diversity in any organization that I'm running. But I think the second point is this: diverse organizations are better. That is what we all know, that diverse organizations make better decisions. And the third thing I want to say is this: I don't take money from corporations, which means I can listen to the people in this room because I don't have to listen to them because I'm not taking their money. So let me talk about my history. My wife, who's sitting over there, and I started a nonprofit community bank to deliver lending to the brown and black communities that commercial banks were cutting off. It was 20 years ago. It's several $billion dollars, and the people in that bank are overwhelmingly non-white. The people in our organization in Sacramento, California are overwhelmingly non-white, and our campaign is overwhelmingly non-white. Why? Because that's the most effective organizations we can have.
Thank you, Tom Steyer. Now we're going to move on to question 2. California's cost of living continues to squeeze working families. And for too many, the safety net is the only thing standing between stability and crisis.
Question 2. Systemic barriers have long limited access to economic opportunity for Latinos, immigrants, and communities of color. As costs rise, safety net programs are more critical than ever. What is your plan to ensure safety net programs, access to safety net programs for all Californians, regardless of where they were born? Tony Thurmond, we're going to begin with you.
Well, as I indicated, I intend to start. As a member of the Latino caucus, I was proud to vote with my colleagues to establish universal health care for undocumented immigrants. And as governor, I'm prepared to restore that program in California. I also will help us launch a pilot to have a universal child care program in the state of California. If you look at the cost of child care, it costs more to send our kids into child care than it does to send them to any of the universities in the state of California. We've got to make child care universal, as other states have done. We have to pay those who work in child care a great wage. These are largely women-run businesses and women of color who need our support, who need to have our support and access. We need to fund the subsidized childcare programs that we have in the state of California so that every family has access to quality care. I was proud to make transitional kindergarten a rule, and we will make universal childcare the law in the state of California.
Thank you, candidate Tony Thurmond. We're going to move on to Betty Yee. You may go ahead, please.
Let me just frame this issue in terms of what California is facing right now. We have a growing wealth gap in California that is disproportionately hitting our Black and brown communities. And when we think about how we solve a wealth gap, it's not just about addressing the affordability issues. It's about building an economy where we're going to have more stable jobs that are going to where people can earn more. And it's also going to be about actually funding the supports that people need so they can actually be in the workforce to earn more. And so it is looking at how we're going to grow this economy, one, but also how we're going to make our investment in things like affordable healthcare, as I mentioned earlier, growing our healthcare workforce in the very communities where the needs are, childcare, family care, all those things are the supports that are necessary for people to be fully participatory in our workforce and in labor.
Thank you. Moving on to Katie Porter.
Affordability, making ends meet, they're not buzzwords for me. They've been my life's work. From growing up in a family that relied on food assistance for a period, to making sure that I was standing up and fighting and winning against predatory lenders, to listening to the stories of families in bankruptcy pushed there by medical debt. I have been working on these issues long before I was working in politics, and I will continue doing that. Too often we hear elected leaders throw up barriers to these programs, sometimes in the name of accountability or efficiency. But what those kinds of barriers actually do is push out those who most need help. The next governor of California needs to be a governor for Californians, period. Full stop. No qualifications on documentation or anything else. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate Katie Porter. We're going to move on to Matt Mahan.
Thank you for the question. You talked about affordability and then how we ensure access to necessary safety net programs. And on the one hand, we know a lot of the strategies for making sure that those who need programs have access to them, from in-language support to making sure our teams are diverse and representative of our diversity, as we talked about on the last question. In San Jose, we've dramatically reduced barriers to accessing public services through high-quality language translation using new tools. But part of the goal, and we hire promotores, we have a lot of great strategies, but we also have to remember the goal also isn't just to expand the safety net programs, it's to ensure fewer people need them, because to Betty's point, we're creating more upward mobility and economic opportunity. That's the biggest job the next governor needs to do, is improving our public schools, removing barriers to building the housing we need, investing in infrastructure, supporting small business formation, so that we have fewer people who are dependent on those programs, because we're giving people opportunity.
Thank you, Matt Mahan. Moving on to Javier Becerra.
So if I'm going to be the healthcare governor in California, I have to commit to you right here and now that I will guarantee that our communities will not lose access to Medi-Cal. We will not go backwards, regardless of what Washington, D.C. says, or what the state government has been saying. We must join with those legislators who have said that no one should lose their healthcare coverage, because it is foolish to deny people early access when they will ultimately access it through the emergency room when it's the most expensive. We will fight for that. I will do that as your healthcare governor. I will make sure that there's down payment assistance for all those families who are already paying a mortgage. It's just called rent. And the reason they can't own that home is because they didn't have the down payment. We will expand down payment programs so those families that are great payers of their rent will become great homeowners. We will make sure that finally we pay a living wage. If we want to help those families afford things, pay them a living wage. And finally, early education, not just daycare for our kids.
Thank you, candidate Javier Becerra. Now we're going to move on to Tom Steyer.
When we talk about the safety net, we're really talking about healthcare. We're talking about quality education. We're talking about childcare. And everybody on this stage wants to provide that to everyone in the state of California as a right. And so do I. The difference is I'm going to talk to you how we pay for it, because we have a structural deficit that we need to address. On day one, I will call a special election to close a corporate real estate tax loophole that's worth over $20 billion to the state of California so we can pay for the safety net. One of the things that is eating up every family, every business, and the state of California's budget itself is the escalation of healthcare costs. That's why I'm for single payer, so we can make healthcare a right for every Californian at a price that we can afford. I said we were going to do a windfall profits tax on oil companies, and we're going to tax artificial intelligence for the people of California so we can protect jobs.
Thank you, Tom Steyer. Antonio Villaraigosa.
For more than a decade, I've been saying that we have an economy that's not working for enough people. The fact is, people are working every single day and they can't make it. We've got to identify those jobs that we have to make sure that they're getting a living wage. IHSS workers, people who in-home healthcare workers, childcare workers, security officers, hotel workers. We've got to focus on them and bring them up because we're the 4th largest economy in the world and we have the highest poverty rate in the United States. Nobody up here likes to say that, but that's a fact. And so the next governor's got to focus on that. Affordability is the biggest challenge facing us. People can't afford rent, gas, or a house. And it used to be that you could. And so as governor, I've had a record as mayor and as speaker, balancing budgets, focus. And I still got 3 seconds. I don't know why they turned it off, but I guess I'm done.
Thank you,
I
Antonio.
had 3 seconds and they turned me off.
Thank you. Moving on to question 3. This next question cuts to the core of what it means to govern in a state where millions of people live in fear, simply because of where they were born.
Where do you draw the line between cooperation with federal authorities and protecting civil liberties to ensure California safeguards the rights of all residents, including undocumented residents, and who will make that call in your administration? We're going to start off with you, candidate Tom Steyer.
Well, it's not on. On now? Okay. I have been working with for immigrant rights, including with the people sitting in this room and our team for over 10 years. We worked for this to be a sanctuary state, that no law officer in California can cooperate with ICE by law, except with regard to violent felons. And I'm for abolishing ICE. It's a criminal organization. It absolutely doesn't deserve to exist. But I also know that as the governor of California, I can't just wish it away with the stroke of a pen. So what does it really look like? We are going to criminalize racial profiling, and we are going to prosecute people for that. We are going to prosecute people who commit violence against Californians, including the people who send them to commit violence. We're going to investigate the detention centers and show what's going on. We're going to have a huge legal fund to get back the kidnapped Californians and make sure they're represented well. And we're going to have a huge PR move. Know your rights. Everybody's got to be able to protect themselves.
Thank you, Tom Steyer. Moving on to Tony Thurmond.
We will not work with any federal authorities. And I will direct the California Highway Patrol to arrest anyone, including ICE agents, who violate California laws. We know already through experience that ICE has been terrorizing families out throughout the state and throughout the country. As I mentioned, we have passed legislation that helps school districts that serve 6 million students know their rights to not have ICE on campus and to never serve any information or any data to anyone from the ICE community. You know, if you think about it, this reckless immigration policy isn't doing anything that they said it was going to serve. They said that they wanted to keep us safe. Who are they keeping us safe from? Those who take care of our children? Those who work in agriculture? Those who work in construction? It's bullshit, and we're not going to stand for it. And I'm going to work with Congress to abolish ICE. It's time to start from scratch and rebuild and create a real.
Thank you. Now we're moving on with Antonio Villaraigosa.
I've been taking on the migra since I was 15 years old. I have never seen in my life military-style deportations, people dressed from head to toe like the Ku Klux Klan, with assault weapons, flashbang grenades, kidnapping kids from the arms of their parents, going into schools, courthouses, and hospitals. We'll draw the line on the Constitution. We'll say in this state, we have a right to say you can't arrest people without identification. You got to have a warrant going into homes, workplaces, hospitals, and schools. We have a right to oversee detention centers. We have a right to make sure that kids have health care in those detention centers. And I've got a nice plan to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Villaraigosa. Moving on to Betty Yee.
Yes, so I have no intention as governor to cooperate with ICE and federal agents, and certainly when they are violating the Constitution. Look, this whole mass immigration enforcement with our tax dollars, and the expansion of detention capability with our tax dollars needs to be reversed. We're going to do that in these midterm elections by taking back the House and being sure that we win back the Senate as well. You know, this is a priority with our money. And our money here in California says we respect our immigrants, we take care of our communities, we protect each other. And so I don't see any place where they have a place here in California when they are terrorizing our communities, and when in fact what we should be doing is being sure that we are strengthening our communities and everyone around them so that we can protect each other.
Thank you so much. And now we're moving on with Katie Porter.
We have called to abolish ICE clearly for over a year in this race. ICE does not make us safer, and their activities are immoral, unconstitutional, and wrong. The reality is, despite our sanctuary state policy, we still have too many actors across our state who cooperate with ICE. One of our state universities with a contract to help the Department of Homeland Security. The Orange County Sheriff's Office taking money for detaining immigrants. We talk a good game about this, and that matters. But we also have to do the work to make sure that immigrants are safe, that Californians are safe in every single part and pocket of California. We need to make sure that it's not just about law enforcement not cooperating, that our hospitals, our schools, our places of worship, our parks, our neighborhoods, they all must be safe, not just in words, but in what really happens.
Thank you, Katie Porter. Moving on to Matt Mahan.
I'm so proud of the work we've done in San Jose. We have, over the last few years, made San Jose the safest big city in America. And the way we did that was through community policing, through building trust with our community, because when people trust law enforcement, they're more likely to report crime, to share evidence, to serve as witnesses. We didn't get any help from the Trump administration in achieving that incredible milestone of being the safest big city. In fact, what this administration is doing is racist, and it's undermining trust. It's making us all less safe. That's why in San Jose, we have sued this Trump administration to protect our civil liberties. We've funded legal services for our immigrant families who are under threat. We've passed mask bans and ICE bans. We know that what this administration is doing is making us all less safe, because the foundation of public safety is trust between the community, law enforcement, and the community
Time's
they
up.
serve.
Thank you. Now we're moving on with Javier Becerra.
This issue is very personal to me. When Donald Trump sued California because of our SB 54 Values Act, I was the Attorney General who stood up and defended the Values Act. And we beat Donald Trump in court. We did not allow ICE to engage our law enforcement in those ICE raids. And because we wouldn't allow our local law enforcement to do that, Donald Trump stripped us of $57 million from our local law enforcement agencies. I sued him again. We went toe-to-toe, and I got our $57 million back. When he tried to get rid of DACA, I took him to court once again. And once again, all the way in the Supreme Court, we beat him 5-4. And today there are DACA recipients here today who are still able to thrive because we went to the Supreme Court and said, yes, it can be done. When it came time to vaccines, everyone here was able to get one, including the undocumented, because I made sure that not one person in this country would have to pay one single penny to make sure that they were safe and could live. That's the kind of work we have to do, is stand up.
Thank you. Thank you, candidate Javier Becerra. Now we're moving on to the next question, which addresses something foundational to our democracy and to the political power of the communities in this room.
Question 5. In recent years, the U.S. Supreme Court has narrowed key protections of the Federal Voting Rights Act, and it's widely anticipated that additional safeguards may be struck down. What specific actions will you take as governor to protect voting access in California and to ensure that voters can cast their ballots safely and securely? Matt Mahan, you can begin.
Thank you. Well, in San Jose, we work really closely with our county registrar to answer that exact question. We open city facilities. We do incredible education in language. We do outreach in our community to make sure everyone knows about their right to vote, how to register to vote, where to go, and we make sure that we are present out in the community and doing outreach in language. So it's important that we are actually inspiring people to exercise their vote, that they see that feedback loop between themselves and their representatives. And the threats from this administration, we have to fight using the bully pulpit, the power of the media and social media, using the courts and every lever we have to make sure we make a strong case, not just to Californians, but to all Americans for how important it is that we maintain this institution for everyone.
Thank you so much, May Mahan. Now we're going to move on with Javier Becerra. You may begin, please.
Again, I've had some experience here. When Donald Trump was president the first time, he tried to deny us the opportunity to count immigrants that were undocumented in the census, which would mean we would be denied funding by the federal government because they would not be counted in our population. We fought him. We won in court again. Again, 120 times I had to take this guy to court. He didn't learn very quickly, but we kept beating him. Now let me tell you what I'm doing today. Today I am a consultant with the UCLA Voting Rights Project. We are the ones that sued Chad Bianco, one of the candidates for governor in Riverside County, because he confiscated more than 500,000 of the ballots that were cast this past November during Prop 50, saying he had to check to see if they were counted right. He violated the law. We're holding him to account because he did not have the right to do that. He just went to try to get the Riverside County to pay for this, and they said no. We're going to fight back everywhere we can.
Thank you, Javier Becerra. Moving on to Betty Yee.
Even with some of the strongest voting rights laws here in California, we still are subject to voter suppression. And the best way to really counter this is to work with all of our community partners to be sure that we're getting the word out about where to vote, how to safely vote. But it is also the misinformation that will be rampant coming up with these elections we have to be vigilant about. And so we are going to be, as governor, I will say that voting here in California is going to be accessible and safe and fair and open for all communities. And anyone that tries to impinge upon that right, we're going to stand up. When I go to these forums, I often ask, how many of you have taken a Know Your Rights training with respect to our immigrant neighbors? I think all hands should be up in this room. We're going to all need to be taking a Know Your Voting Rights training pretty soon. And so this is what we need to do, and we're going to do that and be sure that we're getting the word out to all of our communities.
Thank you, Betty Yee. Now we're going to move on to Antonio Villaraigosa.
I cut my teeth with the Southwest Voter Registration Project, registering voters on the east side. I've worked with NALEO and other organizations to empower people about their right to vote. We just passed Proposition 50 because we saw the threat from Washington, D.C. And as governor, I will do everything I can to make sure that we defend our voting rights, because I understand, and I've always understood, I'm here today because there's a Civil Rights Act. I'm here today because there was a Voting Rights Act. I'm here today because people died for our right to be here. And we have to stand up the next generation and not just go to use the courts, not just the ballot box. We got to build a movement. You mentioned Chirla. There are a lot of immigrant rights groups here. We've got to build a movement to defend our democracy. I have been part of that movement my entire life, and as governor, we'll support it, we'll lead it, we'll do everything we can so we can.
You. Thanks, Antonio Villaraigosa. Moving on to Tom Steyer.
So I think it's important to recognize that democracy is under threat in the state of California from Washington, D.C. and Donald Trump. It is a criminal, violent, illegal conspiracy to take away our voting rights, and it will get only stronger as we get closer to Election Day, because he will understand that unless he cheats on a massive scale, he's gone. So it is going to be really important to defend vote by mail. It's going to be really important to make sure people are safe at the polls. There's going to be a gigantic need for the mobilization that Antonio was talking about to protect our democracy. But I want to say this, I'm not just coming to this. The organization we started has registered over 1.2 million young Californians, overwhelmingly Latino. We've mobilized them so we can have fair representation across this state. And it's absolutely critical as we go forward that we just don't defend our rights, we also make sure people show up
Time's
across
up.
our...
Thank you. Now you may begin, Tony Thurmond.
We will use the courts to protect our rights as it relates to voting. Nobody needs to produce their birth certificate to show that they are eligible to vote. When Chad Bianco came and tried to take those votes, he came without any proof. Who did he go to? He went to groups like the Oath Keepers who want to overthrow our government. They've been trying to take away our rights to vote since this country was established, and we're not going to stand for it. We are all under attack. What do? We fight back. We're not going to allow this to happen. We allow our young people to do early registration. We make sure that we do voter education. We have safety watches at every polling place in our state. And we will continue to protect the rights. We will use the courts. We will work with Congress. We'll work with every means necessary to protect your rights to vote. It's why I was proud to sponsor Prop 50. And I'm proud that we won Prop 50 to send a message to step back and don't try to attack our rights to vote.
Thank you, Tony Thurmond. Moving on to Katie Porter.
We have to protect our democracy in California because it is our democracy. It doesn't belong to Donald Trump. It belongs to us. The federal government's role is to set a floor to address the fact that some states have not always followed civil rights laws, including in our own history here. But California has written rules that are a national model for expanding voter access, making sure that our ballots are in multiple languages, making sure that people have the opportunity to vote by mail. When I was in Congress, I passed, with a Republican administration, a law to improve vote by mail tracking to guard against the exact kind of activity like we are seeing from Chad Bianco. We need to make sure that this is not just a right. Again, this happens in reality. We have a lot of red counties in California, and making sure that they are enforcing voting rights as well is an important part of what the governor's leadership
Thank
here
you,
needs.
Katie Porter. Now moving on to the next question, focuses on one of the most urgent issues facing families across the state.
Question 6. Housing is a human right. So we'll ask you directly, in your first 100 days as governor, what is the single most concrete action you will take to move renters, especially immigrant and Latino families, closer to the possibility of owning a home and achieving real housing stability? Javier Becerra, you may begin.
We will begin by building more homes so that there isn't such a demand and an increase in price on all of the homes that are available, whether to buy or to rent. We will make sure that we expand those home ownership programs that I mentioned before. We'll make sure that we have rent stabilization so people aren't gouged when they are renting a home. And we'll make sure that our families understand what it takes to get into a home so they can start to build the nest egg that it takes to get into that home. And if you are in a home, then I will, within the first 100 days, when I declare a state of emergency in our state because of affordability, I will make sure that we freeze property insurance that is going out the roof without any explanation for all those people who have these policies that are being canceled without notice. And then the next time you get insurance, it has gone double, triple the price. We will also put a freeze on utility rates until we can get behind the curtain to find out why these utility companies continue to charge us so much money.
Thank you,
and they make
candidate
so much.
Javier Becerra. Now we're moving on with Betty Yee. You may begin, please.
Thank you. First, I want to be sure that we always consider rent stabilization so that as people are moving into home ownership, that they're moving from a stable situation to being able to own a home. But we have a lot of other attendant costs with respect to homeownership, including what Mr. Becerra said, insurance and also utility costs. I also will freeze utility rate increases so that we can do the audits to be sure that ratepayers aren't due a refund. We have not done audits to be sure that that the utilities have used the money as appropriately when they requested the increase. With respect to insurance, we have to bring insurance companies back into the private market. And so this is where I would go to the federal government to see about standing up a national reinsurance program so that we can get some of these companies out of the FAIR plan back into the private market so we can have competitive rates again.
Thank you, Betty. Moving on to Tom Steyer.
So there's a short-term need and a long-term need in terms of housing. In terms of a short-term need, we need to protect renters. So I'm strongly in favor of greatly expanding the renter's tax credit. People who own a home get to deduct their mortgage payment, but renters don't get to deduct their rent payments. That doesn't make any sense. We also need to protect renters in terms of rent spikes and protect how much it can go up. Long term, we do need to build a lot more houses. That's how we have to do it, but we have to do it a lot cheaper. And I always say, there's no golden bullet here. It's golden buckshot. What does that look like? We need to change the permitting, make it shorter and cheaper. We need to do rezoning differently. We need to bring down the cost per square foot by doing industrial construction offsite and then putting it together on-site. And we need the cities and counties to want to build housing again. When I talk about increasing revenue to cities and counties, that's so they'll issue permits faster and let us build the houses that we need.
Thank you, Tom Steyer. Now moving on with Antonio Villaraigosa.
Let me start with a record. I built more housing in the middle of a recession, by the way, from 2005 to 2013 than they did the 12 years before. That's more rental housing. That's more market rate, more workforce, more affordable, and more homeless housing. Why? How? We made it easier to build. We've got to address a broken CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, that makes it impossible to build in this state. You can sue from Richmond, Virginia for a project in Richmond, California, and it doesn't have to be for environmental reasons. You could sue because you don't like senior housing. You can sue because you don't like homeless housing. The fact is, we've got to build more. I've got a record doing that. And as governor, I will build the housing we need.
Thank you. Tony Thurmond.
Is sponsored legislation state and counties have money to build affordable all across California. Then those big companies that bought all the properties, hold onto them and driving up the cost of rent. We will charge them the big fees and turn those dollars back into affordable housing for working people in our state. As governor, I'm going to give all of you a tax credit. We're going to give middle class people and working class people a tax credit to pay for the rising cost of gas, groceries, and housing. And how will we do this? By taxing billionaires and making them pay their fair share here in the state of California. I will also implement the $10 billion bond that is on the ballot, will be on the ballot in November. I'm proud to support legislation, that $10 billion bond for building affordable housing. And I'll work with all of the school districts in our state that have surplus property, and together we'll build 2.3 million units of affordable housing by the year 2030.
Thank you, Tony Thurmond. Moving on with Katie Porter.
California builds housing too slowly. It takes about 2 years longer to build housing in California than it does in comparable states like Colorado. And that 2 years, you've all heard the expression, time is money, and it's true in housing. Sometimes when you go toward the end of a question, people lose track of what the question was. The question was, what are you going to do in the first 100 days? In the first 100 days, we need to identify, working in partnership with the legislature, all of the policies that are slowing down our building. We need to listen to housing advocates in our community, to local officials, and to make an inventory of what we need to change. Anybody who tells you they're going to fix housing in 100 days is full of bullshit. It took us decades to get into this problem. It'll take us decades to get out. But I'm honest about that.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie Porter. Moving on to Matt Mahan.
Thank you. I grew up in a home that was paycheck to paycheck. Housing stability was a very real question in our home. So I have a sense of what's at stake for many of our working families, and it's only gotten worse since I was growing up. I've put a very comprehensive plan on my website about how I think we can tackle this problem. I agree with many of the suggestions my colleagues have made. I will share this, as a mayor who today is unblocking thousands of homes in the trenches on this issue. It's not enough to just say yes to housing or reform zoning or remove height limits. We approved over 20,000 new homes in our city that weren't getting built because the cost of construction is too high. And so we have to tackle, and in the first 100 days, I will highlight caps on impact fees, restrictions on overly complicated building codes, reduction in litigation risks so we can bring down the cost of building.
Thank you, Matt Mahan. The next two questions come directly from the community. Our first question is from high school student Juan Diego, who is in our audience today. This question looks towards the next generation, the young Californians who will inherit a state being reshaped by AI and the decisions we make today.
Juan Diego was born in Redding, California, and recently moved here to Sacramento.
Hi, everyone. I am Juan Diego. Growing up, I saw my parents work hard, and as I continue school, I want to build a better future in my community. I say that it's not easy while being young. People get ahead with technology, changing jobs, costs going up. What will you do to help my generation get training, good jobs, and a real chance to succeed in the future?
We'll start off with Tom Steyer.
So we're in a gigantic transition right now about jobs, and it's being driven by artificial intelligence. And artificial intelligence is something which is threatening jobs across this state and making it very difficult for young people to figure out what kind of jobs are going to be around. I have a plan in terms of artificial intelligence, and it starts with protecting workers in this state, that it can be used as a tool to make workers more efficient, not something to replace workers. But the other thing that's true about artificial intelligence is it is creating a massive amount of wealth. And to use it to turn billionaires into trillionaires while other people, millions of people are thrown out of work will not happen. We need to tax artificial intelligence for every single calculation and use that money for retraining young people and people who've lost their jobs for real jobs that exist in the community right now, which is true. And I believe we can have enough money there for a sovereign wealth fund, for a financial foundation for this state moving forward.
Thank you, Tom Steyer. And Antonio Villaraigosa.
Hey, where's the young man that asked the question? First of all, I understand your fears, your hopes, and your aspirations. I've made education my priority from the very beginning because I knew that it was an education that gave me a shot. And you're right, AI is a threat, everybody. It's also an opportunity. The fact is, AI is here. It's here not just in the United States, not just in California, but all around the world. We have to train people for those jobs. But we also have to focus on the fact that the AI is going to eliminate millions of jobs. So we need to prepare now for the training for the new jobs in the new economy. One of those jobs, interestingly enough, that won't be impacted by AI is career technical jobs like building trades and the like. We need to build construction.
Time's up. Thank you. Now we're going to move on with Tony Thurmond.
Thank you for your question. As it stands, I've already created a job training program where young people can work in technology jobs while they get on a pathway to being in technology careers. There are 85,000 jobs right now in technology that are not about replacing anybody. AI should never be about replacing California workers. And as governor, I'll stand against any effort to do that. And we'd love to work with you on our career technical programs for California students. Right now, we're spending $500 million to make sure that young people in our state get hands-on experience in jobs that are going to be available, that they'll help them. That jobs like cybersecurity that you can walk into right now, even without a degree, and make six figures. And as governor, I'm going to introduce a program that makes college free in the state of California. Our students in this state have more debt than we've ever seen for college students. That money should be going towards
Thank you.
buying.
Thank you, Tony Thurant. Betty Yee?
We should be developing a universal foundation of AI literacy for all Californians. And for the young man who asked the question, what we should be doing there is being sure that you are being exposed to digital education and technology education as early as possible in your academic journey. You know, when I think about AI, yes, it is true. It will displace workers. It's already starting to. And I agree with Mr. Steyer. We should be looking at these companies that are making gains right now, AI companies, to pay into a workers' first fund so we can start retraining those who have been laid off. We're going to be reading about layoffs in the thousands rather than the hundreds. We're going to be reading about people who are going to be unemployed for longer periods of time. And why the companies should cooperate with us is because really, if they don't, when we are looking at how we're going to retrain workers now, they're probably going to be subject to more intense regulations by the legislators in this room. So we can create a partnership here to stave off the worst of what can happen with workers who are displaced.
Thank you, Betty Yee. Katie Porter?
We face a choice about AI. It is not inevitable that AI results in workers having less. That's a policy decision, and it's one that our next governor is going to need to confront beginning day one. We have jobs today that are dangerous, that are dirty, and that are hard. Some of those jobs could be done by AI, and the prosperity could be shared by everybody. If we do AI right, it could usher in things that too many of us think we can't have. The ability to work one job and raise a family. A potential for a 4-day work week. The opportunity to do work that is more meaningful and more personal. That's what's at stake in AI. If we don't ask the question, does this AI benefit us? Not corporations, but us. Then we won't get that kind of bright future from AI.
Thank you, Katie Porter. Matt Mahan?
Thank you. You know, as governor, I'm going to build on the work we've done in San Jose, where as mayor of the largest city in Silicon Valley, we have harnessed this technology to empower our workers. We partnered with San Jose State University to create an AI upskilling curriculum for city workers. 1,000 of our workers will go through this program this year so that they are equipped with these tools. We've got the largest companies bringing free tools and training into our public libraries. Through our workforce development program, we're paying for apprenticeships where we pay someone's salary for the first year, where they learn jobs like being a semiconductor technician, and then the company can hire them full-time at the end as they've built those skills and are more valuable to the company. There are a lot of creative solutions to harnessing and leveraging these tools, but we have to get ahead of this technological change. It will be a top priority for me as governor.
Thank you, Matt Mahan. Moving on to Javier Becerra.
Juan Diego, for you and your generation, we have to make sure we teach and prepare you for the new technologies and the new industries that are going to move California forward. But for your parents, for people who are already out in the workforce, we have to make it very clear, and I will as governor. AI will not supplant a worker, it will supplement a worker. We must protect those who are in the workforce from the ravages of new technologies. Secondly, we have to make sure that our community colleges and our universities are ready. So I will have 2 years of tuition-free college education for our students so they can go on and don't have to be restricted by their tuition payments and say, I can't go there because I cannot afford it. And finally, let us not forget that not everyone has to go to a college or university to learn the skills that let them thrive in California. Let us boost our apprenticeship programs that help skilled individuals make not just a living, but feed their family really well.
Thank you. Thank you, Javier Becerra. Our final full question is a question submitted by a health advocate in tonight's audience. Beatriz?
As an undocumented immigrant without DACA and part of a mixed status family, Medi-Cal is the reason I was able to access care for my mental health, my pregnancy, and my basic health needs. Without it, I don't know where I will be, and many in my community are facing that reality right now. We made history in California by expanding Medi-Cal to all income eligible residents regardless of immigration status. But that promise is already being rolled back, with H.R. 1 threatening further cuts, a state budget shortfall, and the enrollment freeze for undocumented Californians. Access to care is already being taken away. State leaders often cite budget constraints and competing priorities to justify these decisions. So as governor, what concrete steps will you take to first defend existing medical eligibility, address the enrollment freeze, and protect health coverage for Latino and immigrant communities?
And in the interest of time, so we can try to get to the lightning round, if you can try to keep your remarks concise. Antonio Villaraigosa, please begin.
When we were confronted with the crisis of healthcare in California, I authored Healthy Families. Millions of kids got healthcare as a result. 69% of them were Latino. I believe healthcare is a right, not a privilege. I will make sure, as governor, that we provide healthcare for the undocumented. For those, and I say that in the most conservative audiences, by the way, and when they push back, I say the following: we already pay for it. It's called emergency healthcare. Over the life term of that immigrant, it will cost us more for emergency care than it would to provide the healthcare for them. What do we need to do to cut those costs? I believe that we need a public option to compete, against insurance companies. A lot of the experts say that's something that we need to do. We need to cut costs. We need to expand community clinics. We need to make sure that drug prices...
Time's up. Thank you, Antonio Villaraigosa. Moving on to Tony Thurmond.
As I stated, as a legislator, I helped to create universal health care for undocumented immigrants. And as governor, we will restore it. For all the reasons that you heard, it's the right thing to do and it has the right benefit in terms of saving costs. I also support single payer. We have to be in a system that puts patients over profits. And right now our healthcare companies have had exorbitant profits. Even the nonprofit healthcare institutions have $66 billion in what they call reserves. Those dollars should be reinvested back into the patients that they are charged with serving. And so as governor, we'll restore those benefits. And as the UC region, I think I'm the only region who voted to give undocumented immigrants access to federally paid jobs on campus. We will continue to support our DACA students. We will support our undocumented students and their families to have access to good care and to quality education and jobs.
Thank you. Betty Yee?
As governor, I will lift the caps and be sure that we have full coverage for those who are undocumented. You know, heaven forbid we have another pandemic. And I think about if our undocumented neighbors are not covered or don't have access to healthcare, what that would mean. And so this is just the wise thing to do, and we are going to find the dollars to do it. It's a priority. The single biggest priority of any of us as in a public office is to ensure the health and safety of our people. And this is really a top priority for me as governor. But the other thing I'll say about healthcare is that we're all talking about how to raise money to offset the federal funding cuts. There are things that we can do within the Medi-Cal program to be sure that we are squeezing out more money out of that system. We don't currently have the independent authority to audit Medi-Cal. Department of Healthcare Services does it. When we did have the independent authority, we always found fraud by providers that submitted false claims. We also don't do well with our third-party liability program to uncover almost $500 million of third-party claims.
Thank you, Betty Yee. We're moving on to Katie Porter.
When any one of us isn't able to get health care or get treatment, we are all less healthy. That's why every single Californian, regardless of their immigration status or how they get their health care, should be passionate about restoring Medi-Cal for every income eligible individual, period. If we lose healthcare access for those without documentation or those thrown off the Affordable Care Act exchange covered California because they can't pay astronomical premiums because of Donald Trump's actions, we all become less healthy. People go to work sick. People are in hospitals close. We are on a trajectory to close 25% of our safety net hospitals, and Medi-Cal cuts are a big part of that. Everybody benefits when we are all more healthy, especially those of us who know what it's like to be a mom and to welcome a new life into the world. I just want to say congratulations to you. I can't wait to govern for your baby.
Thank you, Katie Porter. Matt Mahan.
It is cruel and ineffective to deny people health care. As others have said, it's people still get care. They just show up much sicker in an emergency room for acute care later. It is self-defeating. It's cruel. It's wrong. It is not the path. Thank you for the question. I would add, and I agree with, I think Betty highlighted this, we have to make our healthcare system more efficient. The cost is going up faster than our incomes. It's crowding out spending on education and childcare and all the other things we need. There's a lot of waste in the system. We need to embrace the role of nurse practitioners and expand them. We need to expand health clinics. We have to have price transparency and more competition in the system. And we can use technology to bring down overhead costs, which by many studies account for up to 30% of the cost of healthcare in California. So we need to make the system better, but ensure everybody has access to it.
Thank you, Matt Mahan. Moving on to Javier Becerra. You may begin, please.
Healthcare's a right. That's why when I was secretary, we made sure that everyone in the country had access to the vaccine without having to pay for it. We never asked questions about your status. And that is how we were all able to be safe. Because if one of us is not safe, all of us are not safe. That's the way I will treat healthcare as your healthcare governor. I will make sure we are expanding access to healthcare. As I said previously, we're not going to go backwards. We're not going to take a knee to Donald Trump simply because he gutted $1 trillion out of the Medicaid program, what we call Medi-Cal. We're going to expand federally qualified health centers, those community health centers that service so many of the undocumented families. Under my watch, those community health centers grew to highest levels we've ever seen in this country. And we're going to make sure we offer our DACA recipients access to the Affordable Care Act again. That's what I did as secretary. We'll do it again. We will not go backwards, because to go backwards is to deny all of our health care is improving.
Thank you, Javier Becerra. Tom Steyer.
So immigrants built California. Immigrants are the foundation of California, and we need more immigrants for California. If healthcare is a right, it has to be a right for immigrants as well, regardless of status. We have a money problem. That's why I want to close this corporate real estate tax loophole for $20 billion so that we can pay for healthcare for everybody in California. But it's true, what Matt said is true. Healthcare keeps escalating at twice the rate of inflation, and it is eating us all up. And I've heard for a long time that, oh, don't worry, we can be more efficient and business can do a better job and all that stuff. Not so. It's been going on for 45 years. Businesses had their shot. We need single-payer healthcare, because that's the way we get the profit out of it. That's the way we take the profiteering out of it. That's how we deliver quality healthcare to everyone in California for a price that California can afford.
Thank you, Tom Steyer. We now move to our lightning round. Each candidate will answer yes or no and may offer up to 30 seconds explanation. When time is up, we move on, no exceptions.
2 questions, straight answers. Let's go. Law enforcement agencies across California are increasingly using surveillance technologies, including facial recognition, license plate readers, and data sharing with federal immigration authorities. These disproportionately target communities of color and immigrants. As governor, will you restrict the use of these technologies and prohibit California law enforcement from sharing surveillance data with ICE? Yes or no? You have 30 seconds. Katie Porter, we'll start with you.
Yes, and I'm proud to have the LU questionnaire to demonstrate where I stand on these civil rights issues, unlike some on this stage. I am very, very proud of the work I did in Congress to stand up for Muslim Californians, Muslim Americans who were being racially profiled by the Biden administration. That is what leadership means. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie Porter. Matt Mahan?
Yes, in San Jose, we strictly limit the use. We don't allow facial recognition. We don't allow sharing with third parties like ICE, and we delete all data every 30 days.
Thank you, Matt Mahan. Javier Becerra.
Yes, privacy is our right, not the right of these companies. When I was Attorney General, I protected the privacy rights of all our consumers with our new internet privacy law. I'll do that as well as governor.
Thank you. You may go ahead, Betty Yee.
Yes, and we should be sure that we have the strongest privacy rights in California to prevent against even further use of them.
Thank you, Betty Yee. Tom Steyer?
Yes, sharing with ICE is unthinkable. This is a criminal organization that's trying to take away our freedom, trying to take away our safety. The idea that we would share information that they could use to control Californians is absolutely unthinkable.
Thank you, Tom Steyer. Antonio Villaraigosa.
Yes, we will not share data with ICE. With respect to facial recognition and other technologies, it would depend. I can't tell you categorically no to that, but sharing information with ICE, absolutely not.
Thank you, Antonio Villaraigosa. Tony Thurmond?
Yes, there will be no data sharing agreements with ICE. As a council member in the city of Richmond, I was very proud to pass ordinance that said our police department will never, ever cooperate with ICE. And as your state superintendent, I wrote and sponsored the legislation that says our schools never, ever share data with ICE. We will continue that practice under my governorship.
Thank you, Tony Thurmond. Next question. Foreign policy may be federal, but Californians are already experiencing the impacts. Higher costs, potential security threats, restrictions on free speech on college campuses, and an increase in violence targeting underrepresented communities. Do you believe California should take a more active role on the global stage, economically or diplomatically, when federal decisions create instability? Yes or no? We'll start with Javier Becerra.
Yes, absolutely. When I was Secretary of HHS, I traveled the world talking about what we can do as a country. Now that Donald Trump has essentially abandoned the rest of the world, California should step up, not just internationally, but nationally. We have regional compacts that we can form to help those states that are like-minded do the things that Donald Trump is abandoning, like cancer research. All the things that he has said no to, we will say yes.
Thank you, Javier Becerra. Betty Yee?
Yes. Look, California has a huge role on the global stage, and what people expect around the world is our leadership. And so we are, as governor, I will be sure that we are taking that leadership role, but more importantly, with respect to the policies of this administration, we're going to do everything we can to reverse many of it.
Thank you, Betty Yee. Tom Steyer.
We absolutely need to. We have a president who's destroying our economy, who's ruining our environment, and who is taking 200 billion of our dollars to blow up a country halfway around the world. That we need, that money we need for education and health. Just as a simple example, when it comes to energy costs have gone through the roof. And that means we have to be independent and work with people overseas to move to a cheaper, clean energy economy, use the technology developed in California to bring down our costs.
Thank you, Tom Steyer. Antonio Villaraigosa?
Absolutely. We're the fourth largest economy in the world. Absolutely, California is going to play on the world stage. When I was mayor of LA, I played on the world stage, particularly on climate change, because we were leading the nation and number 5 in the world. So without question, we should be on the world stage, particularly where we have a guy undermining our democracy and not really speaking for the vast majority of us.
Thank you. Tony Thurmond.
Everything about this president's reckless immigration policy is destroying every sector in our country, our agriculture, destroying our construction industry, destroying hospitality. It's attacking those who do the work. It's attacking those who pay into systems like Social Security that they can't even get a return on. As California, we have to be a nation state that builds relationships with our partners. Just this week, I announced a program we'll build that allows students who live in communities in Mexico that border California to be able to attend a high school in California and to have dual enrollment in our community colleges.
Time is up. Katie Porter?
Absolutely, yes. Particularly in areas where California has long led and is already the world leader, like climate and AI and fighting for human rights.
Thank you. Moving on with Matt Mahan.
So I understand the outsized role that California plays on the world stage. but it's because I understand it that I won't be spending a whole lot of time traveling around the world. We have problems to fix here at home. I am going to be laser focused on building housing more affordably, making energy more affordable, improving our public schools, increasing safety in our neighborhoods, so we can get back to being that leader for the rest of the world.
Thank you. We are now in the final moments of tonight's forum. Each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement, a final word directly to this community.
The people in this room represent organizations, families, and communities from every corner of California. They will carry what they heard tonight back home with them. This is your moment to speak to them directly. We'll start off with you, Katie Porter.
My entire career has been about holding powerful people to account. I've done that with Donald Trump. I've done that with CEOs of big oil, big banks, and big pharma. My entire career has been built on how families struggle to make ends meet and how government can help change that. This is a campaign about the future of California, about whether our kids and grandkids are going to enjoy not just the same opportunities we've had, but better opportunities. This is a moment for California to elect a new generation of leader, one who wears a skirt. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Katie Porter. Tony Thurmond.
I want to say thank you to the Latino caucus for tonight and to all the immigrant advocacy groups who are here tonight. You've got a hard choice. You have a lot of friends on this stage, a lot who served in California. I would submit to you that when you make your choice, it comes down to 3 things for you to consider. Experience, and I've talked to you about my 18 years serving council, legislator, state superintendent, someone who has a vision for our state. I've been very specific about how we can build 2 million housing units, how we can house the 10,000 homeless teens who are sleeping on our streets. And then finally, the third thing, lived experience, and that you should elect someone like myself who represents the descendant of immigrants, who represents the descendants of former slaves, who represents someone who grew up in a household on public assistance, on the free lunch program, on food stamps, on government cheese. I ate so much government cheese, I thought USDA was a brand name. No, I did not bring any, but we need to make sure that we have plenty of programs for those who are hungry.
Time's up. We're moving on with Betty Yu.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to address all of you. Look, I look out at all of you and I see the hope and the future of California. You know, we've talked a lot about affordability issues. We've talked a lot about the issues that we're going to have to deal with in this next handful of years, and we will deal with it. Because we know as immigrants or as descendants of immigrants, nothing comes to us. Everything's a fight. And so we will fight for what is rightfully ours, being contributors to this economy. But we ought to be thinking about something much further ahead, and that is, how are we going to strengthen our immigrant communities to where we give them economic power? We cannot continue to be vulnerable against this Trump administration or future economic downturns. We need to build our economies locally and regionally. That includes and centers our immigrant communities. And this is the work that I want to do as governor, because I know that California is only as great as everybody's ability to participate fully in it as contributors to our economy, as contributors to our society and our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Matt Mahan.
Growing up in Watsonville, I will never forget my morning drive to school. As it was cold and dark outside and the sun was coming up, people would already be out. Immigrants would already be out in the fields, picking berries, doing the backbreaking work of putting food on our tables. Our immigrant communities are the backbone of this state. And for too long, California has not been working for working people. Something's wrong in a state where we can increase spending by 75% in just 6 years, and none of the outcomes that matter to our working families are meaningfully better. I will demand accountability for results. I will not fund failure. I will lead regulatory reform to ensure that we're building housing, bringing down energy costs, improving our public schools, just as I've done in San Jose to make us the safest big city, to reduce homelessness and get lots of homes under construction. Let's build a better California. Thank you.
Thank you. Javier Becerra.
I have taken on reckless federal government, ruthless corporations. I've defended workers' rights, women's health care, immigrants' rights. I've launched civil rights investigations. I launched the 988 Suicide Prevention and Mental Health Lifeline. I have taken down sex trafficking rings and organized crime operations. I'm not the richest nor the slickest candidate in this race, but I am the most experienced. And I will tell you, the governor's office does not come with training wheels. It is not a place for on-the-job training or for inflated promises. We need to have a governor with whom you can have the trust. Well, not just fight, but win for the hardest working and the lowest paid. Win for those who are the next generation, who don't believe they're ever going to have a chance to buy a house. Win for every family who believes California is the
Time's
place
up.
where we
Thank
can
you,
have.
Javier Becerra. We're moving on with Tom Steyer.
So I said that immigrants built this state. Well, this is the richest state in the richest country in the history of the world. And we have the highest poverty rate of any state in the United States, and we have the most inequality in the United States. So what I'm talking about is shared prosperity. Having 12 trillionaires and 40 million people who can't make rent is not prosperity. What I'm talking about is taking on the people who are keeping costs up and taking on the people who are preventing working people from succeeding. The people that I want to represent in this state are here. I want to represent farm workers and domestic workers and nurses and school workers and home care workers. We have the money to do this. The huge corporations and the billionaires are doing just fine. What we don't have is the shared part of shared prosperity, and I will take them on for you and make sure it's shared.
Thank you, Tom Steyer. Antonio Villaraigosa.
Again, I want to thank you for being on the front lines of defending our democracy, for protecting the safety net, for standing up for the notion that every single one of us deserves civil liberties and civil rights. I've spent a lifetime in the movement. I've spent a lifetime on the front lines. That's why when I was Speaker and Mayor, I focused on that safety net. I focused on opening up the door. I understood that to whom much is given, much is expected. Look, this job is not an easy job. And you're right. This is about experience. The job closest to being governor of the state of California is mayor of San Jose, Oakland, San Francisco, and San Diego combined. It's got more poverty, more immigrants, and it is a city that I made better than when I found it. I'd be honored to have your support. Thank you for your fight.
Thank you, Antonio Villaraigosa. That concludes tonight's forum. On behalf of our sponsors, the California Immigrant Policy Center, the California Latino Legislative Caucus Foundation, and ACLU California Action, thank you to each of the candidates and for being here tonight and for speaking directly to our community.
And thank you to every person in this room. You are the reason that this forum exists, the stories you carry, the families you represent, the work you do every single day. That is what California's next governor must be ready to serve. Nuestra voz importa. Keep using your voices.
This has been Nuestra Voz 2026. Buenas noches y muchas gracias.